Greetings and salutations. I am Poetic Heretic, and this is an excerpt from a Mysterious Universe article going over accounts of encounters with, allegedly, modern-day woolly mammoths. It is as unsettling as it is fascinating to think that these huge beasts may still lurk among us, as they were thought to have gone extinct 4,000 years ago. The accounts take place during the last 500 years, and as recently as the 1800s. But if they were still around then, it is perfectly plausible that they could still be around now. So let us begin. An early possible encounter with either woolly mammoths or a similar North American mastodon were reported by the English explorer David Ingram, who ventured out into the wilds of North America in the 1560s. During his travels he took detailed notes on the regional flora and fauna, as well as the topography and customs of the native peoples he encountered. These notes are mostly very accurate and even mundane by today's standards, but one account stands out. The explorer wrote of how he had seen quote-unquote hairy elephants roaming about, which is remarkable considering that there were no such indigenous animals at the time, and also Ingram's notes were usually quite accurate. What were those creatures he saw? We may never know for sure. Another very early account comes from the 1580s, when a Russian family called the Stroganovs supposedly sent mercenaries, led by a Yermak Timofeyevich, to hunt down some bandits in Siberia. When they passed the Ural Mountains, Yermak claimed that they had come across what he said was a large hairy elephant lumbering through the wilds. Natives of the area then confirmed that these creatures, although rare, were very real indeed, and were sometimes hunted for their ivory and meat. In the early 1800s there were several reports of supposed surviving mammoths. In 1807 there was a report from the explorer David Thompson, who told of hearing from the natives of enormous elephant-like creatures stomping about the wilds of British Columbia, Canada. The natives said that the immense hairy creatures were rarely seen, and that they slept while leaning against trees. Thompson would then find strange elephant-like tracks in 1811, which he believed had been made by a young mammoth, and in the end Thompson would say of it all, quote, "The circumstantial evidence of the existence of this animal is sufficient, but, notwithstanding the many months the hunters have traversed this extent of country in all directions, and this animal having never been seen, there is no direct evidence of its existence, yet when I think of all I have seen and heard, if put on my oath, I could neither assert nor deny its existence, for many hundreds of miles of the Rocky Mountains are yet unknown, and through the defiles by which we pass, distant 120 miles from each other, we hasten our march as much as possible." End quote. There was also an account in the Edinburgh Magazine, supposedly made in 1803 in western Canada, near a place called York Fort. The witness, a Thomas Pollock, claimed to have been a sergeant with the Hudson Bay Company at the time, and that he and his guide had come across quite the curious beast while venturing out to make contact with native tribes. Pollock would say of what happened thus: "We left York Fort on the 19th of May, 1803, about fortnight after, having been sent across a river, the name of which I do not now recollect, by Mr. Louis's orders. The guide and myself suddenly came upon animal of an enormous size. It appeared about 20 feet in height, and had a very heavy and unwieldy appearance. I can give but a very lame account of it, on account the consternation into which I was thrown. The largeness of its belly was enormous, nearly touching the ground. Its color was a dirty black." Years later, in 1818, there was another account from the Rocky Mountains in the United States. The witness said that there were what seemed to be woolly mammoths wandering about the region, and would say of these mysterious creatures, "The fact of its existence rests upon the testimony of two different parties who had been sent some errand into the interior valleys of those mountains." The first party came suddenly upon the animal in a deep and formerly unvisited recess, and were so alarmed at its prodigious size, exceeding that of the largest elephant, and at its unknown aspect, that they immediately retreated in great consternation to the encampment from which they had been dispatched. Another party was sent to the same spot to ascertain the fact, and though the animal was not observed, its footsteps could be distinctly traced, and each compartment of its hoof is stated to have admitted both the feet of the travellers. It ought to be observed that these parties were perfectly familiar with the appearance of the buffalo, which indeed they were in the daily habit of killing, and that the animal which they saw cannot therefore be regarded as an individual of that tribe. It was seen, too, as I have already stated, in a very remote and central valley, and the intervals between its paces are described having been of astonishing magnitude. Now we know well that animals of immense size have inhabited the northern parts of our earth in former times, and the huge remains which are every day dug up are more likely to have belonged to individuals of such an animal as that now alluded to, than to any extinct species of a former world. That concludes the excerpt. Don't forget to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.